Don't worry, in 70 days there will be no snow. I'm going to make a bold prediction. Maybe even just 7 days from now, the snow will all be gone, but certainly by the time we come to Easter, right? This little season of pre-Lent, these 3 weeks leading up to Lent, prepare us to prepare. They prepare us to prepare, that's what Lent is all about, for the day of Easter. And I want you to think this morning about what you would like to have on Easter Sunday morning. I don't mean what kind of, breakfast food should we have, what kind of sourdough bread should pastor make, how many slices of the egg casserole will you have, but think of the spiritual benefit you want to share on Easter Sunday. Easter is a day to be filled with joy, right? All of the hymns, all of the songs, all of the praises resonate with great joy. And so the question for you today is, how do you prepare to come to Easter Sunday and experience everything that the Lord has in store for you? You have to have the right kind of an eye. That's what I want you to prepare for this pre-Lent and throughout the Lenten season. And we're going to do it kind of in a paradoxical way this morning. Some of you know the name C.S. Lewis, right? C.S. Lewis wrote the great Narnia books, but he also wrote a whole bunch of other works, and one of them is called the Screwtape Letters. The Screwtape Letters is an examination of temptation, and the idea of that book is one demon is writing to another demon about how to tempt this human. And the whole book is kind of dripping with this sarcasm. It's funny, but it's also kind of scary because you see just how tailor-made the temptations of the devil and his demons are to you. This morning, I want to kind of adopt that. I'm going to tell you how to prepare to have an evil eye. Not because I want you to have an evil eye, not because the goal of pre-Lent and Lent is so that you can come to Easter with a begrudging heart, but because that's what Jesus warns us about in this parable. This parable speaks loud and clear of God's goodness, of God's generosity, that sinners are not justified by their own works, but we are justified how? By grace through faith. The first hour, the third hour, the sixth hour, the ninth hour, the 11th hour, it does not matter when the Lord has called you. He gives to each the same generous wage. But some, on that day of parceling out the goods, some looked on his generosity with offense. The translation that we heard this morning says, "Do you begrudge my generosity?" But other translations, more literal ones, would put it this way: "Is your eye evil because I am good?" And so let's go with that idea this morning. I'm going to tell you, here are the 5 foolproof ways to get an evil eye. And I'm going to tell you that not because I want you to have these things, but as we learn how to get an evil eye, I'm going to also point out to you the steps to avoid an evil eye, because I do not want any of you to come to Easter Sunday, or certainly to come to the end of your life, and to look at the Lord with an evil eye. The truth is, God is good. This parable repeats that in so many wonderful ways. The Lord is good. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, and his mercy endureth forever. But some of those workers heard that call, the Lord is good, and instead of giving thanks, they said, yeah, well, not good enough. And here's what happened. There's 5 easy steps that each and every one of you can take. They're kind of easy. They require a little bit of work, but you guys are diligent people. I think you can do it. Y'all are diligent. Y'all can do it. If you really try, you can get an evil eye too. Do you want that? Well, here's what to do. The first thing you have to do if you want an evil eye, you have to forget something. You have to forget God's gracious call. You have to forget that it wasn't because of your resume, that it wasn't because you put in a wonderful, glowing application with all kinds of references that the Lord called you. Think about the terms of the parable. The master goes out early in the morning and he doesn't say, all right, which one of you applied? Let me see your resume, guys. Let's see. Do you have experience working in a vineyard? Can I contact your previous employers to make sure that everything checks out? No, he simply calls them into the vineyard. It is all grace. But if you want to have an evil eye, you have to forget that. You have to forget it like the people of Israel did. You have to forget that it was the Lord's grace that sought you out, not your application, not your resume. In fact, if the Lord looked at our resumes, he would send us all packing. You have to forget that it was the grace of the Lord that called you to the waters of holy baptism, not something that you earned, but that he called you and he promised a wonderful reward. St. Matthew was a tax collector, right? And his gospel often has these economic parables. This one is no different. Make no mistake, the denarius, though it's just a day's wage, stands in this parable for the promise of salvation. The Lord gives this promise, and he is faithful to his promise. But you need to forget all of that if you want to have an evil eye. You need to forget his grace, and instead, you need to think about what you deserve. You need to think about what you're owed. You need to think about what you contribute and how wonderful you are and how much you work for the Lord and how you really are doing him a favor by working in his vineyard. After all, what would he do without you? If you want to have an evil eye, forget God's grace and think instead about everything that you deserve. That's the first step. Can you do that? All right, the second step is you need to exaggerate a few things. You need to exaggerate a few things about yourself and about everyone else. You need to exaggerate your labors and your hardships and your productivity. Think of how it went for Israel in the Old Testament. They fell into this trap of thinking that the world depended on them. They forgot God's gracious call, and they thought it was all about what they earned. You need to exaggerate your hardships and your labors. You need to exaggerate your own productivity. And at the same time that you do that, if you really want an evil eye, don't you want that? If you really want an evil eye, you also need to exaggerate how easy everyone else has it. You have to think you're the only one who works hard. You're the only one who's productive. Everyone else is lazy. Everyone else is lackadaisical in their faith. Everyone else takes it easy, but not you. You bear the burden of the day. Now, there's some pitfalls to avoid if you want an evil eye. One of those pitfalls is you have to avoid being around contented workers. Because if you're around people who act like they enjoy following God's commandments, if you're around people who think this is the greatest thing in the world, to come to church, to serve the Lord, to love my neighbor, what better calling could I have in life? If you're around those kind of people, you're never going to get that evil eye. So avoid them. Avoid them at all costs. Exaggerate your own hardships. After all, God does call us to work in his vineyard, doesn't he? There's labor to perform, there's people to love, there's sins to forgive, and that's painful, isn't it? It's hard to bear the burden of the day. It's hard to bear the heat. So exaggerate how hard it is, and exaggerate how easy everyone else has it. In the parable, you can easily imagine how that went, can't you? Those who worked at the first hour looked at the third hour workers, the sixth hour workers, the ninth hour workers, the 11th hour workers, and said, they haven't been around like us. They haven't been here for long. They haven't endured all the same things we have. And you know how it goes in your own life. The devil wants to tempt you to this too, that no one else has it as hard as you do. No one else knows what it's like to be married to that guy or to that girl. No one else has kids like you do. No one else has a job like you have. No one else has the burdens that you have. So exaggerate your own works and exaggerate everyone else's ease. Never consider that everyone suffers. Never consider that, because if you do, you'll never get this evil eye. Now, the third thing that you have to do if you're going to get an evil eye, those first two steps, forgetting God's grace, exaggerating yourself and everyone else's ease, those ones you can handle, but this one is crucial. This one is crucial. If you're really going to get that evil eye that you want to have on Easter Sunday, right? If you're going to get an evil eye, you need to grumble. It's not enough just to keep it all within yourself. You have to let it out. You have to vent your spleen. You have to grumble, and not only do you have to grumble, right? But you need to find other people who will grumble with you. You have to avoid at all cost people who give thanks. This is what makes it really hard to get an evil eye if you come to church. Because when you come to church, the whole service is full of thanksgiving. But you know how to avoid that, don't you? Just kind of seal your ears shut. Just kind of keep your mouth closed. Just kind of stare straight ahead. Don't participate as little as possible. Participate in the service, right? Because if you do, you're going to get this contagious thing called Thanksgiving. And that's the death rattle for grumbling. Instead, you've got to find people who don't give thanks for their life, who don't give thanks for the work that God has given us. You have to find people who will grumble just like you. And if you find them, then you can murmur, you can grumble, you can find all kinds of faults, and lo and behold, you can get an evil eye. You know how it went for Israel. They sealed themselves off from God's goodness. They had the temple, they had the sacrifices, they had the service of the Lord all day, every day, but they just kind of shut their hearts to all of that. And just like them, you can do it too. You can do it too. You can find people who will grumble just like you. You can find people who will encourage you and kind of egg you on. Yeah, that's right. It is really hard to be a Christian. Yeah, that's right. There are all kinds of problems in the church. Yeah, that's right. It is really difficult. If you find those people, then you are well on your way to getting an evil eye. But if you put yourself in a congregation of people who give thanks, man, it's going to be really hard to get an evil eye. So, by all means, whatever you do, avoid a congregation like that, right? Avoid a congregation like that. Instead, find yourself a little group of people who will grumble just like you. And the fourth step to getting an evil eye, this one's important too. Those first three, you can kind of get into the circle any way you want. You can start by forgetting God's grace. You can start by exaggerating your own hardships. You can start by grumbling. Just, wherever you get into the circle, make sure you do all three of those things. But this is kind of the fourth step, and you have to have the other three down first, okay? So save this one until you've forgotten God's grace, until you've exaggerated your hardships, until you've done a good amount of grumbling. The fourth one is you have to accuse the master. You have to accuse the master of the vineyard. And this one's dangerous, right? Because if you accuse him to his face, you just might see his wounds. This is what's so hard about accusing Jesus. If we accuse Jesus of being unmerciful, if we accuse Jesus of being ungenerous towards us, we run the risk of seeing those nail marks in his hands, of seeing the crown of thorns that encircled his brow, of seeing the spear wound in his side. So you have to kind of get that picture of Jesus out of your mind. Instead, you have to think of him as a harsh taskmaster, as someone who just requires and requires and requires, of someone who is unyielding and unbending. And if you can do that, if you can get that picture of Jesus in your mind, then you're going to be able to accuse him. But if you can't get that picture out of his mind, well, then shoot the messengers instead. Instead of accusing the master of the vineyard, just accuse your fellow Christians. Just accuse the messengers of the Lord. If you can't close your eyes to the goodness of Jesus, well, then just accuse his church. That's a lot easier, isn't it? That's a lot easier because the church isn't as good as Jesus. The church is made up of people like me, like you, people who fall short, who miss the mark. The church is made up of all kinds of other fellow workers just like you, and you can see their faults a lot easier than you can see the faults of Jesus. But you have to close your eyes, right? You have to close your eyes to the goodness of the Lord, and you have to close your eyes to the goodness of his church. Because here's the wonderful thing about the church. Even though it is made up of sinners, even though it is made up of pastors and people who have all kinds of faults, it is also made up of pastors and people who love you. You have to forget all of that. You have to forget all of that so that you can accuse Jesus and his church of mistreating you. You didn't give us what we deserved. You didn't give us what we deserved. You gave us something less. All right, so those are our 4 steps, right? But I promised you 5. I promised you the 5-step how to develop an evil eye. And so this last one, this is the final piece in getting yourself that good evil eye. You have to refuse to listen to his response. Listen again to what Jesus said in the parable. When those first-hour workers accused the master, he didn't just sit there silently. He responded, right? He said, I haven't done you any wrong. Now think about it. In terms of the parable, those who came at first were promised a denarius. Did the master not pay them what he promised? Of course he did. He is faithful. He is just. He is righteous. He never goes back on his word. Grace for others does not come at your expense. But if you're going to have an evil eye, you can't listen to that. You can't listen to God's faithfulness and to his generosity. You have to forget all that. You have to close your ears to it. And you can't listen to him say things like this, can't I do what I want with what belongs to me? See, what this parable so wonderfully proclaims is that Jesus wants. He wants to pay his workers. He wants to give the reward. He is not some kind of tight-fisted master. He is not analyzing the spreadsheets and making sure that the expenses don't outweigh the cost. He is willing to pay. He is willing to pay at the price of his own lifeblood so that you may be saved. He is the master, and what belongs to his is his to do what he wants with it. And what he wants to do is to give it away to you. But if you're going to have an evil eye, well, you can't listen to that, right? Don't listen to that. Don't hear that message. Instead, just kind of close your ears off to it. The last thing he responds to them with is this searching, probing question, is your eye evil because I am good? The goodness of the Lord Jesus is seen precisely in this, that he is faithful. He calls, he gives you work to do in his vineyard, he blesses the work of your hands, and he will be faithful to his promise. He will give you what is right. But if you want an evil eye, you can't consider any of that. And if you can do those 5 things, if you can forget God's grace, don't remember his goodness, if you can exaggerate yourself and others, don't think about humility, if you can grumble and find other grumblers, if you can accuse the master and if you can refuse to listen to his response, well, then guess what? You can have that evil eye. And you can get just what those guys got in the parable. You can get sent away from the master. Here, take what's yours and get out of here. Does that sound good? Is that what you want for Easter? You want to come to Easter with an evil eye and be sent away from the Lord and go your way with your own bitterness and be all alone? I don't think so. It's not what I want. I don't think it's what anyone in this room wants. So if you don't want an evil eye, then remember God's goodness. Remember that it is his gracious call that brings you into his kingdom. Rejoice in the work that he gives you. It is far better to be employed by the Lord, to have his commandments guiding your steps, than to stand idle in the marketplace all day. Instead of grumbling, increase thanksgiving. Let your voice ring out when the call comes. Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. And make sure you say, for his mercy endureth forever. Instead of accusing him, praise his name. Praise his name early in the morning and before you close your eyes at the end of the day. Let no accusation come against your Lord. See his wounds and his scars. See his great love for you. And listen. Listen to these wonderful words that he says. Can I not do what I want with what belongs to me? Surely he can, and he does, and he will. To him be the glory now and always. Amen.